Never trust someone just because they share your last name. It's a lesson I never wanted to learn. But life doesn't always wait for you to be ready. I was 10 years old when death became my roommate. First my dad, gone in an instant after a scaffolding collapse at a job site. Then my mother, bit by bit, fading from chemotherapy and prayers whispered in the dark. By the time her casket was lowered into the frozen earth, I had already learned how grief can silence even the most stubborn of tears. But I wasn't alone. Uncle Dennis stepped in like a lifeline. My mom's older brother, her only sibling, was everything I thought I needed. Tall, sharp, successful. He wore polished shoes, spoke like a man who never lost a debate, and drove a silver BMW that always smelled faintly of cigars and cinnamon gum. He took me in without hesitation, moved me out of our worn-down farmhouse in Jackson, Ohio, and into his sprawling suburban home in Columbus. His kitchen had marble countertops. His lawn was trimmed with the precision of a golf course. I remember thinking I'd landed in a movie, but even as a kid, I noticed things. He was generous, no question, but it felt transactional, like he was always keeping score. He called me son in front of others, but rarely when it was just the two of us. He helped me with homework, gave me an allowance, but emotional warmth? That was a different currency, one he rarely spent. Still, I told myself I was lucky. I was fed, clothed, sheltered. I made it through school, landed a scholarship to Ohio State, and built a life that most people would consider solid. I married Emily, a nurse with a wit sharp enough to slice through any bad mood, and we carved out a quiet rhythm together. She was my anchor in a world that still felt unsteady, and I never once questioned Uncle Dennis. Not until the day I turned 28. That morning, while clearing out a box of old books from my mom's things, I found it. A worn family Bible. Between its pages, folded neatly and yellowing with age, was a letter in her handwriting, shaky but unmistakable. Caleb, when you turn 28, the farmhouse in Jackson is yours. It's the only thing I have left to give you. A place where your future can begin when the world gets too loud. Never forget, home doesn't leave you. It waits. I read that last line over and over again. The ink smudged slightly as if her hand had trembled while writing it. Tucked into the fold was a photograph. Me as a baby, cradled in her arms, the old farmhouse behind us with its crooked shutters and rusted wind chimes swaying from the porch. Promise, place, future. I called Uncle Dennis that afternoon. The Jackson house? He repeated. Oh, Caleb, I meant to tell you. I had to sell that place years ago, right after your mom passed. Her medical bills were suffocating. I handled it quietly. It wasn't worth keeping. I paused. But, she said it was for me. She wrote it down. He was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry. Truly. There wasn't a will filed. I did what I thought was best. I wanted to believe him. He had taken care of me, protected me, gave me a future when everything else fell apart. So I let it go. For 2 weeks. Until a voice from the past reopened a door I didn't even realize was still unlocked. It was a Thursday evening just after dinner. Emily was dozing on the couch, curled up under a worn quilt my mother had sewn when I was a baby. The TV murmured in the background, but I barely heard it. The phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Caleb? This is Luke Hensley from Jackson. I straightened. The name tugged at a long-dormant memory. Luke was a neighbor kid, older by a few years. His dad owned the local hardware store where my parents used to buy nails and fertilizer every spring. I drove by your folks' place today, he continued. Saw someone unloading boxes. Figured you'd finally moved back. I blinked. Wait. The house? The farmhouse? Yeah. Looked lived in to me. Porch lights on. There's even a car in the driveway. I thought it was sold, I said, more to myself than to him. Doesn't look that way. My pulse kicked into overdrive. The next morning, I called off work and packed a weekend bag. Emily raised her eyebrows but didn't ask many questions. You going back there? She asked. I need to see it with my own eyes. The drive to Jackson was like peeling back layers of time. Cornfields blurred past the windows. The old gas station where I once bought baseball cards was now a Dollar Tree. But the air still smelled of fresh soil and wood smoke. And the house, our house, still stood at the end of a narrow gravel road, nestled behind a row of sycamores. It was weathered but proud. The white paint had peeled in streaks, and the roof sagged slightly in the middle, but it was unmistakably ours. And hanging from the porch, still chiming faintly in the breeze, was the old metal wind chime, rusted but still singing. A silver sedan sat in the driveway. I walked up to the front steps and knocked. A woman answered, mid-30s, friendly but cautious. "Hi," I said. "Sorry to bother you. I'm Caleb Dawson. This house used to belong to my family." "Oh." She hesitated, then softened. "We just moved in last month. We're renting it. From a Mr. Dennis Caldwell." My breath caught. "Do you happen to have the lease?" She nodded, disappearing for a moment and returning with a document in a manila folder. And there it was, the signature, his name, Dennis Caldwell, my uncle. My mind raced. Back in Columbus, I spent the next 3 nights combing through public property records. The farmhouse had never been listed on the open market. Instead, the deed had been quietly transferred from my mother's name to Dennis's, 2 months after she died. And there was no will filed with the county, which made no sense, because I held the will in my hands, folded inside a Bible, signed, real, unless he'd never filed it. Maybe he'd hidden it, or worse, pretended it never existed. That night, I opened an old cedar box of my mother's keepsakes. Inside, beneath her wedding ring and faded hospital bracelets, was something I hadn't seen in years. A brass key. Tied to it was a tag in her handwriting. "For when you're ready to come home." I stared at that key until dawn, because I knew now, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was betrayal. And it wasn't buried in the past. It was standing in my future, holding open a door that was never his to unlock. The key rested in my palm like it had been waiting. Brass, worn smooth on the edges, still faintly warm from my grip the night before. That little tag, "For when you're ready to come home," felt less like an invitation now and more like a quiet prophecy. I wasn't ready, but justice didn't wait on readiness. First thing that morning, I called Stanley and Rowe, the law firm listed in the corner of Mom's letterhead. I'd seen their name before but never thought I'd need them. The receptionist, an older woman with a scratchy voice, paused when I mentioned my mother. "Hold on one moment," she said. "Mr. Rowe may want to speak with you himself." A few minutes later, I was sitting in a small wood-paneled office with thick green carpet and a ticking grandfather clock in the corner. Smelled like old books and slow truth. Martin Rowe looked at me over the rims of his glasses. "Caleb Dawson," he said softly. "You look just like her." I didn't smile. I slid the folded letter across the desk. "She said she left me the farmhouse." He took a breath before opening the letter. As he read, his brows furrowed, and his lips pressed together. "She did," he said. "I drafted her will myself. It was legal, witnessed, signed. The farmhouse was to be transferred to you upon your 28th birthday." I stared at him. "Then why wasn't it?" He removed his glasses and folded his hands. "I gave the original to your uncle. He said he'd handle the filing after the funeral." I had no reason to doubt him. He was family. Family. The word hit different now. I left with a copy of the will, notarized and clear as day. Back at home, I laid it on the kitchen table beside the lease agreement with Dennis's name on it. Emily stared at the documents in silence. "He stole it from you," she finally said. "Yeah. You're going to confront him?" I nodded. "Tomorrow." She stepped closer and put a hand on my chest. "Then do it for you. Not for revenge. Not to hurt him. Do it to take back what's yours." The next afternoon, I drove back to Columbus. He opened the door without surprise, like he'd been expecting me since the day I turned 28. "Caleb," he said, smiling as if everything was fine. "Come in, son." I flinched at the word son. I stepped into the living room. Same leather couch. Same fireplace mantel lined with pictures, except none of me. He'd removed them, erased me. I held up the folder. You want to explain this? He opened it calmly. His eyes scanned the will, and for the first time in years, I saw something break behind them. I was going to tell you, he said softly. Eventually. You forged a property transfer, I said, keeping my voice low. That's illegal. You stole a house that was promised to me, lied about selling it, and then rented it out for profit. He rubbed his face. I know. I messed up. No, I said. You didn't mess up. You made choices. Selfish, calculated choices. I was drowning, Caleb. After the recession, the business was collapsing. I needed cash flow. I saw the deed. No one had filed anything. I told myself, what difference does it make? It was sitting there rotting. You mean my inheritance was rotting? I snapped. I raised you, he said, voice rising. Put a roof over your head. Food on your plate. I didn't have to. Your mother trusted me. She trusted you to honor her wishes, not rewrite them. He looked at me, eyes tired, mouth tight. I was ashamed. I didn't want you to think I was the kind of man who would steal from his own blood. You are that kind of man. The silence between us cracked like ice on a frozen lake. I left without another word. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the copy of the will, the lease, and the old key still lying next to them. Emily sat across from me, arms folded, her expression unreadable. You could take him to court, she said. You'd win. He could lose everything. I know. Then what's stopping you? I looked down at the key. I don't know if I want to destroy him, I said. I just want to rebuild what's mine. We met again, this time at the farmhouse. It was a cold Saturday morning, gray clouds hanging low over Jackson like a blanket of unfinished business. Dennis pulled up in his BMW, older now, dusted with gravel. When he stepped out, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. He looked small, not physically but in spirit. His posture slouched. His hands trembled slightly as he walked. Did you bring the documents? I asked. He nodded, opening a folder. The deed was there, signed, notarized, ready to transfer. I also brought this, he said, handing me a folded letter. My apology. For the newspaper. For anyone who cares. I took it without a word. You could have buried me, Caleb, he said quietly. I deserved it. You did, I replied. But I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for her. She gave me this house for a reason, and I won't let your mistake steal her gift from me. He looked at the porch, at the old wind chime swaying gently. She used to love that sound. I didn't answer. He handed me the keys. I'll go, he said. You won't hear from me again. I nodded, and just like that, he was gone. In the months that followed, Emily and I worked to restore the house. New shingles, fresh paint. We found Mom's old quilts in a cedar chest upstairs, a box of vinyl records still in the attic. And in the far corner of the living room, tucked behind loose floorboards, I found something else. A photograph. My mom holding me as a baby, Uncle Dennis beside her, younger, smiling, real. I didn't frame it, but I didn't throw it away either. I kept it in the drawer where I store the key, the one with the tag that says, for when you're ready to come home, because I came home, not just to a place, but to the truth. Dennis didn't deserve forgiveness, but I gave it in my own way, not with words, but with the decision not to become like him. Some people think justice is about punishment, but sometimes it's about restoration, restoring the truth, the memory, the voice of someone who was silenced. And sometimes it's about choosing peace not because they deserve it, but because you do. If this story touched something deep in you, remember, justice begins when we speak the truth, but it finds its power when we choose not to let pain define who we become.